My radio story started where we're both from in Tacoma,
Oh,
Washington.
yes.
Basically, when I was younger, I grew up at my grandma's house, and I'm from Parkland in Tacoma, so that's like by Spanaway. I went to Franklin Pierce, which is predominantly a white school, but we have a little bit of mixture because we're right on the Tacoma School District line. So every time kids get suspended from like Mount Tahoma and Lincoln, they come to our school. And the same with like if they get suspended from like because you know where Fort Lewis is, like in Lakewood, like
Oh,
Lakeside Club
yeah.
and Park, they come to our school. So we get all the bad kids. And like I grew up in just like a multicultural little city in Parkland once again, and my grandma was really religious, so I was not allowed to watch a lot of TV and movies and stuff when I was younger. But the only thing she let me do was listen to the radio in in my in my room. So pretty much like growing up, I just always I listened to Cube 93. I grew up on Cube 93. It's funny because now me and Eddie Francis and Tiffany Warner are friends, but I was like back in the day, I used to call you guys and do the that roll call where they're like, "What's your name? Where you from?" Like that that thing. That's really was like my Bible was like trying to win tickets to Summer Jam and try to, even though I could never go because it was out in the gorge and I was like 12, like trying to win tickets to whatever from Cube 93. And then as I got older, we had a broadcasting class at my school. And basically, they took us on a bus from Franklin Pierce to Washington High School, which is our rival high school. And we just learned how to do little, very basic things like to make a fake TV show, like a fake morning news segment. And I just like really loved that. Like I excelled at being like a host type of thing. So I kind of took that and ran with it. I went to school in Florida because I wanted to move out of Washington because I was just tired of it. I lived there forever. And I majored in journalism and production. While I was there, they had a college radio station. It was pretty much like play something off your phone and then talk like like that. Like it wasn't at all like a real radio experience, but it was like to get my feet.
Okay.
But even then, we had to do a what is it internship to graduate, like my senior year, and we so happened in Jacksonville to have a partnership with now iHeart then Clear Channel. So they were like an approved internship site, and they're like, oh, just go get the credit and go get coffee, do whatever, make coffees, like do whatever they ask you to do. So I go there, and literally in my first day that I'm like in the building, I'm doing my orientation and everything. Um, the rapper Rick Ross was like came through, and he brought like 50 people. This is when he was like promoting this album, and he just bought a whole bunch of Wingstop, so he had a whole bunch of wings and like champagne with him. And I was like, I want to do this for the rest of my life. So I interned at iHeart Jacksonville, and I did the typical intern stuff like promo team and like doing little social media posts and things like that. And I think my class was the last class to have interns for the company before they like shut it all off because they got sued or whatever like that. So they offered me a part-time promo team position, and I took it, and I just really ran with it. And like they once again, they started me as a promo team member. So I was putting up tents, I was spinning prize wheels, I was doing all that.
Yeah.
But then as things started to open up, they're like, hey, we need a board op. Hey, we need a social media digital person. Hey, we need what else did I do? They needed uh, me to do like to run the live shows that they were doing. So like at the cluster I was at, they had one of the biggest country stations in the world, which is WQIK in Jacksonville. And that my PD there, Cindy Spicer, she was really well connected with the country world. I knew nothing about country. I'm a hip hop girl, maybe pop. So like I'm sitting there with like Brantley Gilbert and Luke Bryan, and I'm like, who are you? Like,
That's amazing.
this is around 2014, 15. So this Florida Georgia line was really big. They were always there.
Okay.
We worked a lot of events. You know those events where like they'd bring artists in and we'd have some winners and they do a little tiny concert, like intimate concert thing. We did that all the time with the country station, and they would always like have me fill in on the country station. And I was like, I don't know country, but I learned it, right? But I only know like bro country. I don't know country like old school type type of country. But because I was so like involved in it back then, I was like, oh, country's not bad. Like we went to what's his name? 100, is it Hunter Hayes? Yeah, we went to a
Oh
Hunter
yeah,
Hayes concert. We went to Eric Church. We went to Brantley Gilbert a lot. Blake Blake Shelton. Like I know I'm up on country. Like I people
yeah.
don't know. Like don't like I know
I'm
my
impressed right
country
now.
stuff. The countryside was the one really giving me opportunities. It wasn't really the hip hop pop side at first. So I just kind of ran with them and did whatever they asked me to. Afterwards, I finally got to do like weekend shifts on the other stations, on like the hip hop and pop stations. And my first PD on our pop station on WKSL, he was like I did an air check for him, my first air check ever, and he was like, he's like, obviously you need to work on some things because it's your first one, but like this is amazing. Like you're gonna go far. You're gonna do great things. I'm like, but they won't let me on the rap station. So I just did pop for a long time. I wanted to move up, and after being there for I want to say like a year or so, um, they pretty much asked they like I was getting ready to be like, hey, I need to make money or I have to leave. Like like as a part time, yeah, promo person, I was like, I need to like start getting paid or I'm gonna look for places elsewhere. So I had applied to a lot of places and just one I literally on our iHeart site there's like that job board, it's just
Mm.
everything that like I just clicked every single one. Even if I was qualified or not, I was like, I'm getting the hell out of here. Like I'm
Hell
leaving.
yeah.
So the first person to call me back, his name was Zach. He is the was the OM in Waco, Texas, and he needed someone to run some stations in College Station where Texas A&M is. And he was like, "Yeah, you could do on air and then be a PD in a small market, which basically means you're going to do everything. Like you're going to be PD, digital PD,
Yeah.
sales, like social media, all that." And I was like, "Sure." Like it was my first full time offer. But remind you, I was only in radio for a year at that point as a part time promo assistant.
Oh wow.
So he offered me to be a PD. Yeah, he offered me to be a PD over two stations, jumping from a part time promo assistant to to a program director.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, like I at first was scared, but then after a while, I was just like, no, like you can do it. Like just go figure it out, go whatever. And I went, and that's how I got out of Jacksonville and got into like actually programming like firsthand. But from there, I was kind of stuck because I had custom stations, meaning in iHeart Talk, just meaning that like someone else programs the music for you. So
Okay.
I didn't really still understand the philosophy of programming. And from there, mind you, College Station is like market 189. Like it's super tiny. It's a college town. It's super tiny. But I was only an hour and like 45 minutes from Houston. And I was like, if I know some people, let me just reach out and see if I can like learn G Selector, which is the software we use, like learn the um, philosophy behind programming, the strategy, things like that. Like, I'll get better and I can get a better job. And it just so happened that I already knew the APD from when I was in Jacksonville because he was in Savannah and like we had followed each other on Instagram and he just had been like following me, like just watching me or whatever. And he's like, hey, just come, just drop down one day and we'll teach you and, introduce you to people and whatever. And I did that for like a year. I would drive 2 hours one way, 2 hours the other way, like once every other week, just to learn how to do G Selector and to learn, just how like a major market operates. And also I was in CHR and how they see at the time, and that wasn't my passion because as much as like CHR is cool, the point of it is to be top 40, to only be what's hot at the moment. But in urban radio, it's more about like a community. Like urban radio, like raises people their entire life. Yeah, like they're more involved with things that go on in those communities. So like to me, urban radio was just where I wanted to be because that's what I grew up on. But everyone looked at me like, oh, that girl from Seattle, like you don't know about hip hop, and it's like, little do you know.
Yeah, 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 exactly.
So then after I was in College Station for like 3 years, I got the offer to go to Houston to be the music director and do middays, which I am now. And that was in 2018, and I've been here ever since. They put me on the Format Center team, so I do the other stations as well now since 2020. And that's kind of my life right now, just working from home and doing all those stations. But it started you know, it started as an intern, like everyone else, just 7 years ago. I was a very minimal paid intern in Jacksonville. And then I just had to move around, and that's how I got here, pretty
That's
much.
amazing. Now, did you feel like you learned so much being in College Station by having to do kind of all that stuff and being thrown in?
I feel like everyone should do what I did. I feel like, you know how they say, like, before you can get on air, everyone has to learn the board? I feel like before you can do anything, everyone needs to go be a PD at a random city station and just like be the person who like just like understand all the moving parts of radio, right? Because we have so many people who just want to be on it because they want to be famous, right? Who just want to be on it because they want to whatever it is that they want to do. But then when it's like, especially our industry now, how it's really downsizing,
Mm-hmm.
when ish hits the fan, how many people in a room can actually like run this station?
Yeah.
Like how many people like understand, you know, I have so many, I'm sure you have a lot of like college students that want to, you know, are asking questions and they want to be part of it. But it's like the reality in 2022 is radio is not just radio anymore. You can't just get on the radio. You have to have like a social media presence. You have to understand marketing. You have to, you know what I'm saying? You have to like really delve into client relationships and making sure you're bringing revenue into like there's so much that I didn't know that went into radio until I was a PD and I was like by myself and trying to survive and stay afloat. But I really do feel like everybody should like if not being a PD, at least just work in programming in a sense so that you understand the you know, being on stage and being behind the curtain, you know, being in the
I feel
office.
like you can have such a different appreciation as a talent in what you're delivering or how you're talking to sales and all that when you figure that stuff out.
Exactly.
Or what's something that stands out to you that like maybe you learned the most or maybe that's been the most valuable from that experience?
So a lot of people like college students who want to get into this industry, they always ask me like for a pinpoint map of how I got to where I am. And they're really I can't give them anything because so many things can't be written down and explained. It's just like kind of taking a leap of faith
Yeah.
and like just betting on yourself because more than anything, I'm sure you know like our business is not even really about talent, it's about relationships.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of what a lot of those things I did behind the scenes I didn't know at the time, but that's what actually puts you in positions is like it's not just how hard you work because you obviously we all have a hard work ethic, you know, like we all want to get better and move up to different markets, but it's more like when someone's in a room and they bring your name up, who is all going to vouch for you? And that's what I didn't realize in the beginning. So I spent my time while I was in College Station. The whole time I knew I wasn't going to stay there the whole time. I was like, oh, I'm going to go to another market. I'm going to, you know, move on to something bigger. So I just kept traveling. Like I spent a lot of money on going to events to make sure I was always in the room during certain weekends. Like making sure I would go to LA all the time for the BET Awards or the Grammys or whatever. I didn't have an invite. I just went to like make sure that like my face was in the room. I was top of mind. I knew like I was building relationships with people. I was also learning. So if I knew someone of a higher status or something, I was just observing how they handle situations like this, you know, like watching interviews. I would go to our station in LA and watch Big Boy do interviews during Grammy weekend because, you know, all the artists are there. So they're all going to come by the station. I would just like really fund my own myself. And I say that all the time, like invest in yourself, but people don't understand to the extent what that means. They think it's just like trying to DM someone on Instagram and have them be their mentor, but it's like you really have to put your skin in the game and put like your money where your mouth is. And mind you, I wasn't making crazy money either. So
Right.
I had a lot of Spirit flights. I slept on a lot of couches.
Yeah.
There was one time I got invited to this like retreat thing or whatever, and I there was going to be every single big name PD that I've ever heard of there, and I was like, I got to be there, right?
Yeah.
Didn't have any money, so I barely had enough money for the flight. I had to have one of my friends pick me up from the airport because I didn't have money for Uber. I saved like $100 to eat within 4 days, which so that's really not a lot. But then I stayed in a hostel.
Oh.
Do you know what I didn't know what a hostel was until I got to Miami. I've never had that experience. So they were like, "Hey, just pay us like $15 a day to stay in this one co-ed dorm bunk bed," and I was like, Okay, so I stayed in the bunk bed and I didn't know there weren't lockers, so I couldn't put my stuff anywhere. And then like just everything you think a South Beach, Miami hostel would be, it was. Like there were definitely felonious activities going on down there. It was crazy, but I told myself if you put yourself through all this, something is coming of this, of this situation, which it did because right after I got my job offer. So that is just it goes to show that like nobody knew I stayed in a hostel and all that stuff. I just needed to be in the room. If
Yeah.
you were invited somewhere that's like that like of a milestone, just be in the room and show your face and just show that you're committed. And after that, I started getting opportunities just because I was there, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I saw her last time. She's committed."
You were watching Big Boy and doing those kind of things, like what? Because like I said, I have noticed that it seems to be like the music, and obviously you do the interviews. Is that like what part of is that the part of that radio that you found really interesting, or what really drew you to it was being able to connect with artists and, like you said, in the community also, or bring the community to the artist, vice versa.
I think beginning when I was in Florida, actually it began because when I was interning was right around the time that Trayvon Martin happened, and that was in Orlando, and I was just 2 hours away in Jacksonville, so it was very closely like related. It really hit home. And then there was another situation in Jacksonville where a kid by the name of Jordan Davis, he was shot out. She was shot for playing his music too loud in Jacksonville while I was interning there. So what started off is like I think everyone just wants to be cool and say like you're on the radio, like oh yeah I'm on air. Really turned into like I said, there's like way more of a meaning when it comes to urban radio, especially Black radio, and what that means for our community. And even here in Houston, you know, George Floyd he went to high school here and he was buried here. And so when that whole thing happened, that was a big protest and a big movement here. And those are kind of the things that I wanted to like kind of hit home on, is just being like a figure in our community for to let people know like yeah we're funny and we're entertaining, but also there's actual serious issues that like we have to take care of,
That I could
and
be
like
real and be
we
your
really need
friend
to
with you, kind of thing.
yeah that we can like pay attention to, because I think that in all forms of social media now and like the gossip blogs and stuff, like everyone's just looking for attention. They're just like doing whatever they have to do to get a click, right? To, you know, and sell that for ads. But like, I just was always like, I am funny, don't get me wrong. I like to have a good time. But at the same time, we need people like figures that are like actual leaders in our community that are like, hey, this is cool for now, but at the same time, let's focus on this this thing going on right here. But when it comes to the entertainment part, it really was when I moved to Texas, a part of that traveling to be in rooms and stuff, I would go to festivals all the time because, like, at the time, this is also the secret. At the time, in 2014 and 2015, nobody was really going to represent our company at festivals because they just weren't really keen on that. So, like, when I moved here, Austin City Limits is a big festival. Nobody had signed up on behalf of iHeart to go, so I went. So I like applied, and they gave me gave me a
Oh
pass.
wow.
And I interviewed like I interviewed like G-Eazy and like Future and all these people because no one because everyone was like kind of neglecting that. They were just like, oh, iHeart, they're gonna take care of whatever. But in reality they didn't. Like I was going with my little backpack and my little $200 Sony camera I bought and like interviewing G-Eazy because nobody was really paying attention to that. I think because we as a company we have our own festival. Like people just I think we focused on that, but then you forget that like all these big moments are happening at these other festivals around the country, and nobody was really going to cover them. So that's kind of where I found like my little platform, because it was just like managers and label people would see me backstage at like every festival. They're like, "Oh, I saw you at the other. Okay, all right, cool." And then to see me again, like, "Oh, she was at the other. Oh, okay." Like, and that's kind of how you know start relationships, at least
Yeah,
in hip hop.
I'm like so fascinated by that because I know a lot of people have like imposter syndrome and stuff. As being kind of that person in the community, do you feel like that, like that people turn to you for that already? Or are you still like, I'm not like that person quite yet?
So I think yeah, I do have imposter syndrome because for some reason, even though I know I'm on the radio, I still feel like I'm not. I feel like I'm a regular person. Like when people recognize me in the streets, I'm like, why? Like I'm not like that big of it. Like
Yeah.
I'm not a celebrity. Like I just talk on the radio, right? But the problem I wouldn't call it a problem. Just I'm just seeing people can't allow you to be like yourself. Like for instance, like I said, I'm funny. I like to be entertaining, joke around. I'm into pop culture, so just talking about what's the news the day, right? But then some people think that I'm only super serious and like I need to be on like news talk and I'm just going at like I don't talk politics because just we it's too dividing, right?
Yeah.
But like people think that when you do get just a little political, then like oh that's all she's about. Oh that's her forte. It's like no, like I'm a human being and we're all into different a whole myriad of things. It's not it's not just me talking about this. It's like also we can laugh about stuff, but then at the same time because I'm goofy and funny and random on my show people are a little taken aback when I do get serious. They're like, "No, girl, like you supposed to make me laugh," you know. So it's still something I'm dealing with, but I think just the longer that I'm just like genuine with people, like, hey, yes, I like to have a good time and I am funny, but I'm a human being and I have, you know, I am black and I have black nephews and nieces and sisters and brothers. And like, if these situations like affect them, I want to share that with you and see if you feel the same way, you know, but people really just try to peg you as one way or the other.
Who were other like Big Boy? Who else were other people that like help influence for like interviewing or artists or I guess in radio in general?
Obviously the Breakfast Club, but Charlemagne was the main like my main he's actually my mentor but like the it's funny because the way I met Charlemagne was when I was interning and I told you I was getting ready to like put my 2 weeks in like I need to go make real money guys. I had literally typed up my 2 week notice and I was headed to the station to go hand it in and as I'm driving to go hand it in I had emailed him my air check like before just like randomly like hey let's just see if he'll respond right I had emailed him my air check 3 times. It was the third time as I'm driving to go quit that he actually called me. And I didn't know who it was because he had like a South Carolina number. And I was just like, hello? And he's like, peace. Hey, Ashley, it's Charlemagne. I'm like, no, it's not.
I have like
And like,
goosebumps.
no, like it checked out. He's like, I'm gonna DM you right now on Instagram. And then he did. I was like, damn. And then I literally had to stop the car and I like started crying because I was like, I had quit my other job, so radio was my only job. And as we all know, in the beginning, radio don't pay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was very just distraught because I was like, this is what I love, and like I would do this for free. Back then, I would do
Yeah.
this for free. I gave up so much to do this, and I sacrificed, and like it's just not working out. So should I leave? Like, what you know, what should I go? And like that was like the sign from God. Was like He called me, and I yeah, and I just had broke down crying. I was just telling him my whole situation. He's just like, he's like, just stay in there, you know, just start doing this and start, you know, try to email these people and send your air checks out and keep up with people, keep checking in and all this stuff and like just get your name in the conversation and whatever. And then that was in 2015, yeah, 2015. And ever since then, like I think I got my job as a PD like 3 months after, I think. But like if it wasn't for him, I would have been doing something something
Yeah, like
else.
the timing of that. You're like, I literally just got a call from Charlotte. Like, I can't like not follow this.
I told you I just moved. I have it framed somewhere, like the email where he was like, "Peace, call me," da, da, da. And I'm like, "What?" But he was just a big name because he was the biggest name in urban radio at the time. But other people I really like, and they might because he's on the competition station. But Ebro, who's on Hot 97, like I love Ebro because he's like me. He's a smartass, and he also is like he can be funny, but he has like honest, real conversations when they need to be had. So I always liked him and Charlemagne. But when I got interviewed to get hired as a part-time promo assistant from an intern, I remember the promo director was like, "So what do you want to do in radio?" And I was like, "I want to be the light skin Ryan Seacrest." And that's where we're going. That's where we ended up. But not too many radio people per se, other than just Charlemagne and Ebro because they were in the top markets. But other than that, podcasts weren't a thing yet. So I wasn't really listening to anyone but them. But then obviously, you'd be a fool if you didn't say Angie Martinez because she's a legend in our format. But pretty much, they were pretty much it.
Do you really enjoy Houston? Like how's the audience there? Like, are you connecting with them well?
Yeah, I've been here 4 years now. And at first, I was very intimidated because Houston is a legendary city in hip hop, and it's a top 10 market. It's like big names come here. Drake raps about it all the time. I was like, there could be a chance Drake is listening to me while,
Yeah.
while he's here. But at first, it was intimidating, just because of the big names, people that live here and stuff. But as the years went by, I kind of noticed that our competition station, which was the Heritage, they've been here for now 27 years, I think, they weren't doing interviews. And I was like, Houston's a big enough city that you need to, there's celebrities here all the time. Like people need to, like, we need to bring artists in and, get them familiar with our station and our team. And I just started doing interviews. I was just like, hey, I would hit up our label reps, like, whoever you got, just bring them through. So I just started doing a whole bunch of interviews because no one else was doing them. That's kind of how I built my name because I would interview people before they got hot. The year I moved here, Megan Thee Stallion was doing a college show that I was hosting, and like literally, like I had never heard of her before. I just saw her perform. I was like, oh, like you're cool. Like we exchanged numbers. Like hit me up. And then later on, we see where she's gone from
Wow.
there. But that's those are the type of things that like were intimidating at first.
That's cool of you to once again realize here's an opportunity. The other station's not doing this. I can be the one to bring that in. Now, did you know then to like were you already automatically like recording video for your stuff and putting it on social, or was that something later that happened?
No, I think I just started doing that when I had uh like my first interviews because I knew that we needed like the video component even in 2015 in 2018. I knew that like we need to be posting stuff on Instagram. We need to be like a credible source of news and information in hip hop. So even if it wasn't for my personal page, I knew to put it on the station page because we just needed more videos of artists in our studio with our logo, with me in Houston, just to like market the station and market my show. So that also goes back to like when I told you earlier that to me everyone needs to just like work a programming job because you understand way much more goes into this than just like hitting your break, right? Like hitting the post. Like way much more goes into radio than just doing your actual on-air shift because I was like, okay, well we need to market. I need to, get like growth and year over year conversion, like all those marketing words, all those programming words, like they're in the back of my head. And I'm like, okay, I had a strategy when I got here. I was like, obviously when you go to a new market, especially as big as Houston, you don't just want to go and nobody knows who you are. Like you want to make a splash. You want to make sure people know your name, know who you're associated with and everything. And that's where people just started learning who I was because all my interviews with artists before they blew up are still on YouTube. And then like people actually, when I'm like at a festival or something, people actually recognize me more from YouTube interviews than actually being a radio
Oh
host.
my
So
gosh.
they're like, oh yeah, you interviewed Little Dirk or like whoever. I'm like, oh yeah, that was years ago. And I hate it because, the older interviews aren't as good as, the ones now. But
That's really interesting to me that that people are saying that to you, and I mean it just goes to show also
mhm.
why it's so important to have the video side that I feel like a lot of stations still are fighting. It's like it's crazy that not every top station does video.
But that's the thing though, is like my station wasn't doing video until I got there. So like, and because the competition wasn't doing video, they weren't doing video. That they didn't start till I got there, and they saw that I was getting reposted on big sites, that I was on TMZ and stuff like that. And I was like, they're like, oh, we gotta provide something. But even when we were at the morning show boot camp, when people are asking questions like, what do you say to people that are fighting digital integration with social media? I'm like, it's 2022.
Yeah.
Like, if I have to convince you to make a video or like to get some kind of conversion from Instagram to listening, like this ain't the thing for you no more. Like, because the game has changed. Like, I'm sorry.
It's so
It
true.
has become way more than just getting on air and cracking the mic and introducing Post Malone songs for 3 minutes. Like there is so much more of a like ecosystem that you have to be as a brand to be relevant in radio today.
Houston, is that like, have you fallen in love with it enough where you want to like stay there?
You know, for the longest time, I my whole when I started in Jacksonville, because I think Jacksonville's market 50 or 51. When I started in Jacksonville, I think everyone sets their goals on number one. So I was like, New York, New York. I'm going to New York. I'm going to be on Power 105. I'm going to make it happen, whatever. That was my goal, purely just to say I was on air in New York, right? Just to say that I'm in New York. But as the years have gone by and as I've gotten older, like life goals have changed. I have other people to think about now, like as opposed to before I was single and whatever, like I could go wherever I wanted to go. It really, to me, is just more about stability now. So the only place I would think of going, like, yeah, New York would be cool, but if you've been to New York, it's like a fucking headache
Yeah.
to live in New York. But the only place I would want to go other than Houston is back home. It's to Seattle, if that opportunity presented itself. But Seattle has been so wishy-washy with stations
I
lately
know.
that I'm like, yeah, I'm like, it is what it is. But other than that, like, I do love Houston. I've grown to love it. It's obviously very affordable to live here. I've lived here for 4 years now, so I've built kind of a community and friends and stuff like that here. But to be honest, like we can do our jobs from anywhere now. I'm not like super hung up on market size. I'm already in a nice size market, but to me, it's more about like where am I going to start a family? So it's not just like worrying about me, like, oh, I want to go to Chicago or wherever. It's more like, do I want to raise a family there? Do I want to live there and commit myself to be there for however many years? So as far as Houston, like I love Houston. Like I'm cool with Houston. Um, but it does feel like if another opportunity presents itself and it makes sense, then yeah, I might explore it. But it's not New York anymore at all. I've been blessed enough. I'm very grateful to where my job that I do, like I'm very well taken care of. Like I'm not hurting for anything. But if I were to go to New York, like I said, it'd have to make sense. And I've been to New York enough times just visiting to know that I don't ever want to live there. But at the same time, like once again, like if it made sense, because I know that New York and LA are the hubs for other things in entertainment and media that Houston specifically doesn't have. But that road will come. Well, when we get to it.
Do you still go to festivals and stuff occasionally now, or?
Girl, I am. It's not even being busy with the station. I'm just like I'm just getting older. Like I'm getting, I'm just getting like. So, for instance, obviously, we had the tragedy of Astro Fest last November here, and I was at that festival. I was backstage. I left way before any of that stuff happened. But it's just the fact of being around a lot of people and having to schmooze people and all the people you have to talk to because you have a relationship and a partnership. You have to make them feel welcome and care about stuff
It's
like that.
exhausting.
Yes, and it's like I always have to be on. Like I always like, and like I don't know if you felt this way, but after you do an on air shift, do you ever just go home and not want to talk to anybody?
I'm an introvert, so hell yeah, yeah.
So after any time when you're literally talking all day, like for me, yeah, I'm in the room by myself, but I'm pretending I'm talking to someone. I don't want to be bothered when I go home. I just want to be left alone. And it's the same thing with festivals. Like there's not a festival out right now that is so intriguing that I'm like, I gotta go because like I said, I've been grateful and blessed enough to have seen all these acts 1,000,010 times. And even though I'm a fan of some people, I have seen them 1,000,010 times.
Yeah.
And I also I'm above the demographic who wants to do all that like festival moshing and all, like that's not for me. But as far as like getting content, I've just kind of moved the method of how I get it now because now it's not so much about just radio stations going. It's really like having the long form conversations for podcasting. So instead of festivals, I just have people like meet me somewhere else. Like, hey, let's go to this podcast studio or the station and like record this. But like that festival environment, nah.
Nah. Yeah, I get it. I totally get it.
Yeah, it's not worth it anymore. I would do it in a heartbeat if it was like just a situation that made sense. Like say Just throwing it out there, Drake doesn't do radio interviews at all anymore. He hasn't for years. But say they called me one day, it was like, "Hey, Drake wants." Yeah, I'm there.
Yeah, hell
Like,
yeah.
where do I need to be? Like, if the situation made sense. But like I said, these artists that are usually on the festival circuit, I've seen them 1,000,010 times. Like, we're good.
I still see that there are young people that are still interested in radio here and that, I mean, they trickle through still. Now, being in it, what you're doing, what, I guess, advice would you give to a young person that's interested in, I want to be on air and do afternoons too?
Every college student that will DM me or something, I just tell them the same thing, that it's not about, don't just focus on being the person behind the mic, focus on making yourself a brand. So being like, even if you're not on air yet, just like you said, start a podcast, do YouTube. Like I literally watch YouTube, like family couple channels and like, like influencers, like YouTube makeup people, like whatever it is you're interested in, just show that your personality can connect through the screen, that you can engage people when they're not right in the room with you, right? So I tell people all the time, like, okay, you want to be on radio, but what else? How else do you showcase your personality? Like, where else are these listeners going to connect with you? Because even me, I am fortunate enough to have a YouTube channel and a TikTok and all that stuff and like understand that. But there's a lot of people who don't. They think that radio is going to stand on its own, and and like people don't even consume radio the same way. Like you really have to back it up. Once again, like I said, with the ecosystem, not only can I just tell you I have tickets in 10 minutes, I have to tweet about it and then also make a TikTok about it and then put a story on Instagram. And that, like, you really need to make sure that you are an all around brand. So I just tell students that all the time. The problem is when they're in college, college kids are just focused on getting their degree and being done. But the problem is they need to start working on their social fingerprint, like ASAP.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like as soon as they get in there, and then making something that's like viable. Don't just make like random personal Instagram stories. Like make videos that you can go back to, make podcasts that show your growth and like that how to keep an audience, and like we've seen it, our industry is very podcast heavy right now. So not only do you need to sit up on the radio and promote those 3 songs coming up, you also need to be on like YouTube or a podcast and show that you can keep an audience engaged for 45 minutes to an hour. So I think it's misleading to like tell college kids like, oh, radio is just talking on it. Like, no, it's so much more now. It's literally being an influencer on the radio.
I wish more people understood that you're a personal brand, and that's going to take you a lot further, across radio stations and just opportunities in general. I think people, like you said, they remember you more from the YouTube videos than they are from you being on the station.
Yes. And that's when I was like, okay, I had already been recording interviews, but when like, I think I was in like Austin during South by, and like some random kids were like, oh my God, you did an interview with Little Dirk. And I'm like, and then some other kids were like, oh my God, you did an interview with Megan. I'm like, okay. Like, cause I don't know. When you post something online, you never know who's actually, it says you get X amount of impressions, but you never meet the people that are impressed that are the ones looking at it. So it's just funny for it to happen in real life. But I wish new people and like some of our older counterparts in radio, they just understood that it's going to take a lot more than just being on air every day. Like it takes more like commitment to doing social media, to being a public figure, if you will, like being in the community, and just let go of those old expectations we had a few years ago and just get on the train and start making TikToks, like
Yep.
just grow the accounts. But I'm just, I guess, excited, interested, anxious to see like where we'll be in like 5 years and just how we're going to evolve again, when it's even more dependent on how involved you are in social media.